Hey everybody, Danny Maude here. Thanks for joining us. This week I bring you to the 15th putting green to teach you how to chip. Why would I do that? Well, here at Canterbury at the moment and in England, we're getting a lot of beautiful dry weather and there's not a lot of grass around. It's starting to burn off a little bit, which is making a lot of chipping for a lot of members very tricky because without a lot of grass, the ball's lying very close to the surface and people are struggling to strike it. They're thinning the ball through the back of the greens, they're fatting it. So I want to show you why. I mean, a lot of golfers, they just don't have a good enough technique to cope with all sorts of conditions around the green. And what I want to do with you this week is show you exactly what you should be doing with chipping that will work on all shots, all chipping shots around the green. We're going to cover the basic setup that you need to do with this, the basic action, and some of the pitfalls that most of the clients that I'm coaching keep falling into. So let's get cracking. So what is chipping? Chipping, all we're doing with chipping, we want the ball to be popped up in the air and then we want it to be released down towards the hole. And the biggest problem to start off with, what I see is, again, it's maybe a bit of a misconception. In order to strike a golf ball, a lot of people are trying to keep their hands way ahead of the golf ball. Now what that does is it promotes a shaft lean, a big shaft lean. With a big shaft lean, we get the leading edge cutting down into the ground too much. Now, you imagine, I'm on a putting green here. If that leading edge is leant forward, what's that going to do to this putting green? We're going to be taking some divots, and we don't want to be taking divots on putting greens, right? So one of the reasons why I want to bring you here is I believe that this surface, if I asked a member to put off this surface who's been struggling with their chipping, they would be like, oh, there's no grass under this golf ball, I'm just going to thin it. I want to show you that it's actually a lot more straightforward than it actually looks. So what we want to do is, there's no grass in this golf ball, so we need to use something else. We need to use the bounce of the golf club, right? We don't want the leading edge cutting in here with lots of shaft lean. We want the back part here, the flat bit here, completely just bruising the ground. And the way we do this to start off with is we start off with a shaft that is much more vertical at address. That's the first thing. We're going to stand reasonably tall, and I'll explain that in a second. We're going to turn our left toe out just slightly, so standing very square and then turn your left toe out. Now from this position you can have your hand, the ball position is very central, directly under the sternum. Now what we're aiming at doing here is basically almost allowing this club to work similar to a pendulum. The club swings back and it swings through and it arrives back with a nice vertical shaft angle and then gradually works its way through again. So something like this, it's just simply swinging backwards and forwards. You've got to let the weight of that club just swing backwards and forwards. And the way to practice this when you're doing this is to just swing backwards and forwards, allowing the bounce here just to bruise directly underneath your sternum. Now if you keep your hands ahead, the club head won't drop at all, and if anything you might get the leading edge cutting it. I don't want to show you that because that will take a divot out of the green. And if you then start to flick it, then we're not going to get the flat bit touching the ground whatsoever, and you're going to get the leading edge just striking the golf ball. So nice and simple, we want the shaft nice and vertical, and we're going to swing backwards and forwards, just letting the base of the club just bruise the ground. Let me show you what it looks like from this angle. So this is a very difficult chip, big left to right, down the hill, and it runs away. So what we're going to show you here is from this position, we're going to get the shaft nice and vertical, left toe pointing outwards, and I'm nice tall posture. Why? Because with chipping, I don't want to have too much arc around my body, right? Excuse me. I want the club to be swinging straight back and straight through as much as it possibly can be. The wrist action here is simply just a hinge back and a hinge through, nothing more than that. Just letting the weight of that club swing backwards and forwards. Let me show you a couple of chip shots in action here. So now watch this, a little bit of a check there, release down to the hole, not bad for the first one. Now from here, notice absolutely no kind of mark on the ground whatsoever. Nice and simple, just letting the club just bruise the ground backwards and forwards. Same again, you can see it checked, they probably checked up a little bit too much. That's the other thing. If you're wondering how to get backspin on any of your chip shots, this is exactly how you do it. Because what's happening here, as the club is simply swinging through, almost like a pendulum, it's swinging through and it's coming in very, very quick. I'm not getting backspin and chopping down on the golf ball. I'm getting backspin by the club sliding and bruising the ground and sliding through, and basically the club's rolling up the face and creating the spin. Let's have another look at that. So all we're doing really simply here is this. We're setting ourselves up nice and tall, nice and vertical. The shaft's reasonably vertical as well. The left toe is pointed outwards. And what I'm doing here is I'm letting the weight of the club just swing backwards and forwards. And I'm letting the feeling I'm getting here is that the weight is dropping right underneath my sternum. It's like the bottom of the pendulum. At no stage am I rushing this. If you're a bit nervous with chipping, you've been struggling, there may be a bit of tension in that grip. Loosen that tension just a little bit to allow the club just to swing back and through, right? Let's have another go at this. Not my best one, that one. I opened up. So this is, let me explain what I did wrong there. So this is again a common problem I see again with some of the golfers. I opened up my body way too quickly there, and what I did then was I sliced across the golf ball and it drifted out to the right. It's okay, it's a makeable putt, but it wasn't great. So what you want to try and do here is this: you've got to be very careful that we don't do this when we're chipping, right? Particularly on the short ones. We don't want to be moving too much. If you move too much on these short ones, you're going to end up glancing the ball and you're not going to get this wonderful simple pendulum style action. All right, let's have another look at this. So again, nice and vertical, nice and tall, shaft very vertical here, backwards and forwards. Lovely. Go on, nice and check now. Watch this come down. Brilliant. So just have a look at this as I strike the golf ball. So what I'm doing here, shaft nice and vertical, feet are very square, then I turn my left toe out, and then all I'm doing here is very important. I'm simply allowing the weight of the club to swing back, and it drops now. Look at this, it's dropping at the base, right underneath my sternum, flowing through, right? Don't be frightened if there becomes a little bit of a wrist hinge on the way through as well. So it starts to cup a little bit, it's not a problem, all right? We're just letting the club bounce there, letting the bounce of the club drop underneath my balance points of my sternum here. Let's have a look at this in action. So nice, simple, backwards and forwards. Nothing more complicated than that. We're swinging back. We're just letting the club just drop backwards and forwards. Let me show you what's happening here just with the wrists. There's very little wrist action, but if there is one, right, there's a gentle hinging back here, and when you're coming through and unhinging, and maybe a hinging forward, but very little. At no stage is there a cock or a rolling in the wrist. We do not want that in this one. We're just simply swinging the club back here, dropping the club back under the balance point, and through. And at no stage, as you can see here, I've made no damage to the green whatsoever. Absolutely clean contact, and the ball's popping up with a wonderful amount of check. So let's summarize. What have we done? Well, we brought you to what I think is probably the toughest surface here. We've got you to the, there's no grass underneath the golf ball here. It's incredibly firm, and I want to deal with how do you consistently strike your chip shots. So what have we done? We've simply said, look, use the bounce of the club, not the leading edge to chip. How do you do that? We want the shaft much more vertical. If the shaft's leaning forward, you're going to get the leading edge cutting into the turf. From here, we want this position here, we want the shaft nice and vertical. We want a stance no more than a couple of club heads width away, and then we're going to turn our left toe out. That is it. We stand nice and tall, and then the real aim here is when we're doing this, we're simply swinging backwards and forwards, and we're letting the weight of the club literally swing and drop under our sternum here, our main balance point. And when this happens, the bounce of the club naturally bruises the ground and we chip. If you're anxious and you start to kind of want to, ooh, I've got to strike it, that's going to change quite considerably. You might move your balance points, you might lean the shaft forward, and that's what creates that digging effect. And often, if you get to about here, you might react to it and then flick, and then the ball goes flying through the green. We do not want that. So it's very, very basic. From this angle, you can see here, I'm nice and vertical here, and all I'm doing is letting the club swing backwards. There's a softness in the wrist here, letting the club fall down under my balance point, under my sternum, and let it naturally release. And at no stage here is there any mark on the green. That's how you create consistent contact every single time. And if you're looking for backspin, that is how you create the spin and the check on those shots. Look, I really, really hope you enjoyed this training. If you do, and you know some of your friends might benefit from a little bit of help with their shot game, please share it. Of course, if you're enjoying the content and you want to receive it in your inbox every week, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments box below, or head over onto my Instagram channel and ask them over there. But until next week, have a great golfing week.